Aloha and welcome to Knitted Paradise, where the needles are clicking and the yarn is squishy. My name is Lucia, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Pearl of the Pacific. You can find this podcast on YouTube or on my website, which is pearlofthepacific.info, or I always post it in the Ravelry group, which is Knitted Paradise Podcast, in a thread titled whatever the episode is. So, speaking of episode, today is January 25th. It's a Sunday, and this is episode 59. Yay! Getting into the big numbers. I guess it's not that big, but for me it feels big. Alright, let's start with Below the Conch Shell. There's 1 week left to enter. Sorry, my phone just, I got a text, so I just turned it on vibrate. It was my dad. I'll answer it later. You have 1 week left to enter the January knit along, which is anything new that you cast on. Just snap a quick picture and put it in the thread, and you'll be entered to win a prize. And the prizes for that are going to be a, what did I decide they were going to be? It's a combo of the Static Sing Socks by Megan Williams of Stockinette Zombies. Plus, she is also going to include a skein of self-striping yarn, because the pattern calls for actually 2 types of yarn, a solid and either a variegated or self-striping. So she's going to give you one of those, which I think is a really awesome prize. And I don't have that. Oh, she sent me a picture. I'll see if I can pull it up and show you. I don't have that with me. And the other one is a couple other people donated, what should I call it, patterns. So I'm going to include another pattern. Not sure which one. Oh, that's the one I decided. I knew I had figured this out. I just didn't write it down in my show notes. The other prize is going to be a pattern from Emily of Fibertown for you and a friend. So you get to benefit, and so does your friend. So those are going to be the 2 giveaways for the January knit along, because we've had so many people enter. I decided to have 2 prizes. So the more people enter, the more prizes we're going to give away. And I already have some lined up for February, and hopefully for some after that. So let me find that picture of the socks. Not the socks, the yarn. Sorry, I didn't get this ready ahead of time. Da-da-da. My phone is slow. Ooh, I've got 2 new messages in a row. Oh, come on! I'm clumsy on my phone sometimes. I can't click on things. Where did it go? It wasn't that long ago. Here it is. It is a skein of Vesper. And it's got some oranges and purples, and that's the pattern in the background you can see there. It's got oranges and yellows and looks like green and purple, 2 shades of purple. Pansies at the something is the colorway. I can't read the rest of the title, but so that's the sock yarn and pattern. And then the other one will be a pattern of your choice by Emily. So that was a long-winded first thing. The second thing is, in Below the Conch Shell, is the February knit along is coming up, and that's, sorry, cat just knocked something down. The Fix It February. So get out anything that you need to fix for, where is it like finally sewing on buttons, or maybe you knit a hat that was too short and now you have to rip it out and re-knit it. Not the whole thing, but add a couple. That's one of the things that I'm doing is there's a hat that I really like that's just too short. And no matter what I do, I can't get it to stay over my ears. So I'm just going to rip out the top, back to the decreases. I have a little bit more of that yarn. I'm just going to add another probably inch, maybe inch and a half, and then do the decreases. So hopefully that will solve the problem. You can also, you know, darn socks, things like that. Anyway, we'll talk more about that next week. The last thing I have in Below the Conch Shell is that I am working, I think I mentioned this last week, I'm working on my new designs for a cowl and a pair of socks. And I'm still looking for test knitters. I had one person contact me about the socks, so thank you. And I'm almost done with that pattern. And I worked today a lot on the cowl pattern. So it's a lot closer than it was a couple weeks ago. And I ended up knitting a lot on it and then figuring out that I needed to rip it back quite a ways and reknit it. But I figured out a lot of things. So that was good. Some good progress on that. And yeah, so get in contact with me and let me know if you would like to test knit either of those things. All right, on the island, I have very few things. I have the Ease, or Ease, I guess it's not the Ease, but Ease by Alicia Plummer, out of Madelinetosh Vintage in Aora. And it is almost done. It has 2 sleeves, and I finished the bottom last night. I knit, the way I did it is I finished, I think last week I had gone through 2 balls of yarn, and I had separated for the sleeves and gotten to maybe like here. And what I did is I then knit on one sleeve with 1 ball of yarn, and whatever was left of that I added to the body, and then I knit the other sleeve, and whatever was left of that I added to the body, and then I joined another ball and knit to the end. So I did this because usually in the pattern it has you knit the body and then knit the sleeves, but I didn't want to slave the sleeves to the end, nor did I want to do them all or at the same time or all at once. So I knit one, knit a little bit on the body, knit the other one, knit a little bit on the body, and actually just finished it. So I just bound off the bottom last night. And it looks a little bunchy, but I know it's going to block out. And in the pattern it calls for size 10 and then size 6, which are 4 apart. But I knit it on size 9 and size 7, I think. So I only went down 2 instead of going down 4, mainly because my 5s were busy somewhere else. So, and I think it looks fine the way it is, so I'm okay with that. And I did the, what I learned is called the invisible ribbed BindOff. I thought it was called the tubular BindOff, but I'll tell you why I learned that in a little bit. So that's what I used on the bottom and on the sleeves. And I wove in all the ends. I just haven't clipped them so far. And now I get to pick up for the collar and do that. So it's coming along quite quickly, and I'll definitely finish that this week. So shove that back in the bag. The other thing I have on the needles is my Business Casual by Tanis Lavallee out of Lorna's Laces Shepherd Sock in Sheridan. And if I can get them stretched out, that's what they look like. And I did a bottom of the heel gusset, which is going to be in my sock pattern. And then I did a short row heel, specifically the Fish Lips Kiss heel. And I got the heel turned on one of them, and it looks like I am a few stitches away from finishing it on the other one. I think I was in a meeting and the meeting ended, and so I didn't quite finish the gusset decreases, but that's that. So here's, I don't know if you can see this because it's kind of dark, but That's the bottom of the heel gusset. That will be in my pattern. And I don't know if I'm going to do it exactly like that, but I like the way it fits. I like the way it kind of hugs my heel, and I like the way that I like the short row heel, but I like having a gusset too, because I like having that extra room. These aren't for me, but this is how I knit socks, so those will be in that pattern. And that's it for On the Island. I know, not a whole lot. I got a lot of progress done. The socks have kind of been off and on, and the rest of the progress has been either on the sweater or on the things I'm about to show you, which have set sail. I know I haven't had a lot of set sail in a while, so this is really exciting. First, I can show you the Grant Park Pullover by Salena Lee out of Leading Men Fiber Arts Dramaturg in Darkest Hour, which is very dark. And it's got this nice diamond pattern, and it's a raglan sleeves. And the back is just 3x1 rib. And it fits my husband quite well, so I'm pretty pleased with it. And it's kind of hard to show you because it's big, but it's really soft and squishy, and he likes it, and that's the most important thing. So, ta-da! So he hasn't worn it yet, but maybe soon. He hasn't really had the chance to wear it. There we go. I'm trying to figure out where to put it over here. The next thing I finished is, remember a couple episodes ago, I was talking about how I wanted to knit from, one of my goals last year was to knit from my acrylic stash for charity. And I hadn't had the chance to do that yet, but I created an opportunity where I can do it. I think I may have overcommitted myself. This may not turn out as well as I had hoped, but we'll see. And so I started knitting away on some things from my acrylic stash. I wanted to just knit some hats, but you'll see in a second, they didn't all turn out to be hats. So this is the Hurricane hat by Andrea Guldin, and it's out of Red Heart Classic in some sort of yellow. It's bright yellow, but I really like the hat, and I would recommend it. It's super stiff because it's knit on, I don't know, size 6 or something, maybe size 7. It's what I had available, and it's acrylic. So I'm gonna wash it in like the washer machine, and hopefully that'll soften it up a little bit. Though I may not do the rest out of that Red Heart stuff, because I have some other things that are a little bit more forgiving. So the next thing I cast on was supposed to be the Barley hat, and it turned out that it was way too big to be a hat. Once I finished like a little bit of the ribbing, I realized that's way too big to be a hat. So I turned it into the Barley Cowl. So it's got this nice piece of garter stitch there, and then the rest is stockinette in the round. I haven't woven in the ends on this one yet, but it's nice and cozy, and it'll keep someone very warm, and that's the point, right? So I finished those two things, and that's it for finished things. Now that I've gotten my hair all over the place. There we go. The camera's backward, so it makes things a little confusing sometimes. Alright, so I finally finished some things. I finished 3 things this week. That's pretty impressive. And the sweater's almost done. Hair in my mouth now. Alright. So next we have, I still have hair in my mouth. Jeez. Oh. All right. From the mainland, I have a few things actually this week. I went back to the library, renewed my card, and got the books. So ridiculous. Anyway, I checked out, well, we'll start with this one, The Knitter's Book of Yarn by Clara Parks, and it is quite informative. I started reading it last night, and she starts out with an introduction, and then she talks about fiber foundation. So she kind of goes through each type of fiber, and those are the types over there. So you've got protein, cellulose fiber, cellulosic fibers, and synthetic fibers. And there's a little bit about each of them there, and then she goes into more depth and talks about, you know, like different kinds of wool, different kinds of Angora. I've just read through the part about protein fibers, which is pretty much the ones from like animals. And I was just about to read about cellulose fibers like cotton and hemp and linen and things like that. And it's really very informative. It talks about, you know, not only where things come from, but sometimes, you know, a little bit like how they're processed or how, you know, like some fibers are gathered. You know, with sheep, they just shear them, but sometimes with goats, they just brush them, or with rabbits, they brush them, things like that. Or with yak or something, you know, sometimes they just have them out in a pasture and they just go gather the fibers from, you know, as they rub against trees, they just pick it off the trees, you know. So that's why some fibers are more expensive, because the gathering is a little more labor intensive. And so it's, you know, the first part is about different types of yarn and their different properties. And then the second section here is about making yarn. And so this would be really good for spinners. It's about, see, I haven't really read this part yet, but it's about, you know, fiber processing and things like that. And this is the most creative title, Ply Me a River. I thought that was really funny. But it talks about different type, you know, single ply, 2 ply, 3 ply, 4 ply, you know, the different yarns, their different properties, things like that. And then there are like 40 patterns in here for different, you know, types of yarn. So they go through that. So it's really informative. I'm really glad I checked it out, and I look forward to reading more. The other book I checked out was CastOn BindOff, 54 Step-by-Step Methods by Leslie Ann Bestor. And so it talks about different kinds of cast-on. So I'll show you a little bit there. So there's pictures of categories, basically. And it goes through them, you know, step by step for each one. And then it does the same thing for cast-offs, or bind-offs, sorry. That's cast-on, bind-offs. There's not as many types, but sometimes there. And so this is how I learned that what I was thinking was the tubular bind-off is actually the invisible, I think that's what it's called. Where is it? Yeah, so it talks about your sewn bind-offs. Okay. So we have Kitchener, sewn, invisible ribbed bind-off. So that's what I was actually doing. And it's pretty much the same thing as a tubular bind-off. And I think sometimes they're used interchangeably. But with a tubular bind-off, you actually separate. They're both for knit one, purl one ribbing. I think you can do them for other types of ribbing. But anyway, with tubular bind-off, most instructions you'll have separate the knit and the purls onto 2 separate needles, and then pretty much you join them like you would Kitchener. And the invisible ribbed bind-off does it it's the same thing. It's still a Kitchener stitch, but it's on one needle. So instead of having to separate them, you just have them on one needle, which I find a lot faster and a lot easier. So I learned something from this book, and I definitely will refer to it while I have it. I don't know if I'd buy it as a reference book. There's not as many pictures as I would like for each thing in terms of steps. I mean, the steps are pretty, well here, well let's go to one that everyone knows, like the long tail. That's the backward loop. Where's long tail? All right, long tail. So, I mean, you look at the pictures there, we all kind of know long tail, and it describes it there, but there aren't as many pictures as I think I would need as a beginner for certain types of cast-ons and BindOffs. You know, I'd like a few more pictures as a visual person. I mean, you can read the words, and if you kind of know what you're doing, I feel like you could figure it out, but I think I'd like a few more pictures, like in between pictures, basically. Anyway, so those are the two books that I got from the library. And the other thing I got from the mainland is some stitch markers from the lovely Anne of Left Field Knit Stitch Marker, Left Field Knits, LFK Stitch Markers. And you can find her LFK Stitch Markers .story envy, like store NVY, like store envy, kind of smushed together, .com. I'll put a link in the show notes. And she sent me these adorable turtles. Turtle. So the way this set comes is there are two that have just loops on them. Put them against something dark there. And then one that comes with a lobster claw. And so you can use these for, I think she said socks, you know, for marking, you know, like on a heel where things go. And then this would be, you know, marking the front or a progress marker or something like that. And, or for hooking these two together, which makes it very nice of keeping them together, which is kind of nice. And, or you could use them like on a shawl to mark your edge, you know, increases and decreases, and then that to mark your progress or something like that. So there's any number of things you could use them for. I've definitely already used the lobster claw one for marking something on a project today. I can't remember which one it was, but I needed to mark something. Anyway, very useful and very cute. I really like the turtles. And she has offered as a prize, that's one of the February prizes, will be a set of stitch markers from her. So, and those will be winner's choice as well, and so she'll mail those directly to you. So, but she sent me these as courtesy. Thank you. And, you know, talk about promotion on the podcast. So check her out. I think her stuff is really well made. And, yeah. So that's it from the mainland. What else do I have in my pile over here? I think that was it. The other thing I have is flora and fauna, and someone asked a question in the What Do You Want to Hear About thread, which is in the Ravelry group, and I have that thread up in case you all have questions that you want me to answer or topics you'd like me to cover, and yeah, I'll do my best to cover those. So the person who wrote in, I didn't write down her name, but she said that she's been thinking about getting a subscription to a knitting magazine and wondered if I subscribe to any or if I purchase any on a regular basis and what would I recommend. And I don't subscribe to any regularly, and I kind of buy them as I need them or as I like patterns, and that's really what I buy them for generally, are the patterns, and sometimes the articles. So I know it's not a very exciting answer, but I don't buy knitting subscriptions to magazines or subscription to knitting magazines. I often just read people's blogs about knitting, and I watch a lot of podcasts. Those are kind of like my knitting articles, I guess, would be podcasts and blogs. And one of my favorites is the Yarn Harlot. She's hilarious and also very informative. And I know there are a lot of others out there. I know Knitty is really great. They have a lot of really great patterns that they have online for free. And Webs also has a pretty good. Now I want to see which ones I subscribe to, or let's see, what do I have here on my knitting blogs? That is not what I wanted. I have Amy Herzog has a blog. Often she talks about sweaters and stuff. And the Luby U, Sherry at the Luby U, has a blog, which I really like reading. Susan B. Anderson also has an excellent blog. The Webs, yarn.com, they have a blog and a podcast where they have special guests, which is kind of fun. And the Yarn Harlot is another good one. Oh, Never Not Knitting. That's another one of my favorites. That was actually the first podcast I ever listened to. First knitting podcast I ever listened to. And she also has a blog. And she shares a lot of awesome things. And but for knitting magazines, I know I've bought the one that had all the Harry Potter patterns in it. I think I bought one that had to do with Jane Austen. And so there's patterns in there, there's articles in there related to those topics. And what else was I know I've bought a few of Vogue Knitting because they have excellent patterns and articles. And I think in terms of what I would recommend is what interests you the most. There's a lot of magazines that's focused solely on spinning. So if you are a spinner, then those are ones I would look into. I know there's Spin-Off and Ply are two of the really popular ones. And for knitting, I know there's Vogue Knitting, I know there's Knit Scene, I know there's a lot of them, and I just don't know all of them. I mean, go to your local yarn store and kind of look through past issues of, different knitting magazines and see what applies to you and what intrigues you and what interests you, and pick one based on that. Look at their past issues and see what kind of things are intriguing. And, if you're looking through a magazine and you're like, well, I don't like any of these patterns, and, these articles are like, oh, well, that kind of applies to me, but not really, don't go with that one. Unless, it's a fluke and you've looked through all their other past issues and they all look great, then go with it. But, really think about it and see if you can get, a 3-month subscription or a 6-month subscription or, a free trial or something, and see if you like it for those, 3 to 6 months. And if you don't, you're not locked into a year and a half, or, you can say, oh yeah, I want to renew my subscription. Or if you don't like it, just say, oh, I'm going to try something else. And that would be my suggestion. I hope that was a little bit helpful. I think that's it. It's not a super long one, but I'm okay with that. I hope you all had a great week, and I will see you next time. Bye.